Hello there, welcome to Genesis Models. I'm Bill Boudreau and I hope you're doing well today. I've got a cracking kit review for you. It's AMK's newly released F-14D Super Tomcat. Now it's not a new tool. I think the original tool was 2019-ish, 2020, somewhere around that time frame. But there are some minor changes with this new release. So there are some new marking options. There are some minor changes with the instruction manual too. So we'll take a look at those first if you've already seen the kit review, but if you haven't, you're in for a pretty good treat here today. So one of the things that I want to show you first is just kind of the box and packaging here. Nice new box art for it. This is kit number 88009. I think the original one was 88007. So it is a 48 scale kit. So a large box, a lot of plastic in here. Take a look at that shortly. On the side here, we've got the new marking options. You can see the Tomcatter's configuration with the red and black scheme as opposed to the yellow and black. You can see some of the armament that's included with the kit as well, similarly to the original release. Over here, we got the bounty hunters markings in that red, white, and blue scheme there as well. So other than that, nothing too special on the other side of the other sides of the box. Just taking a look at how this is packaged. With there being a lot in there, we've got our instruction booklet that comes out right at the top. We've got typically 2 sprues per sleeve here. So at least you have some separation with the plastic. It's not all jammed in one particular bag. You got your intakes that are there, and you got the top and bottom fuselage that are packaged separately. So I like the fact that everything here is pretty well remote from all the other sprues. You don't get a lot of damage to parts when they're packaged in, say, pairs of sprues. Here's some smaller sprues that are, 3 of them are in this particular package. So you can kind of tell that throughout the box here. And then you have some internal boxes here where you got the canopy that's well protected, some landing gear options that are in there, and then they have, of course, the armament right there. And here we have our that one-piece nose structure, or not nose, cockpit structure here. That's part of the fuselage, so I think that's a one piece there. So we'll take a look at that. So let me go ahead and get all of these sprues and stuff out of the boxes and the sleeves, and we'll take a look at this very closely. All right, so I've got everything out of its packaging, and I'm telling you, my table here is absolutely littered with plastic, so we got to get moving here. I don't want to drag this out too long. Let's try. I'll do my best to keep this efficient, but we've got a lot to look at. Let's start with the instruction booklet here. A nice little glossy paper instruction booklet that starts off with just kind of a little bit of a synopsis of the history and capabilities of the F-14D Tomcat, Super Tomcat. Something unique with AMK is they start right away with the marking options here, as well as the paint schemes right at the beginning, where you got to drill some holes to get those fuel tanks and a lot of the pallets that are underneath that airframe. And I think, if you ask me, I think I'm a little bit disappointed here that there are only 2 marking options within this kit. I think, you know, with a new release, I think that original release was, I think it maybe had like maybe 4 or 5 different marking options, whereas this one really only has the 2. So I kind of wish in this release they would have done a little bit more in terms of giving you other marking options besides just these 2. But nonetheless, you're looking at this, I mean, these are some really cool, colorful schemes here for the Tomcatters and the bounty hunters. Little detail there with the colors, the FS color codes. A lot of decals going on these, so we'll take a look at the decals next here. You have the options here. I think when you look at the plastic parts for the instrument panels within the cockpits, I think you'll see that they're very, very detailed. So I think you'll have an option of whether or not you want to paint that cockpit up with the detail in there, or if you want to use the decals that are right there. We've got the ordnance down here, and I think that's one of the main differences with this kit is the original release had some air-to-ground armament, I believe. This one really only has air-to-air. Coming over here, and I think that here's another major thing with this particular instruction booklet is that when I looked at the original release, that instruction booklet, everything was just kind of cramped into a picture or the instructions, and it looked very, very busy right off the bat. And I think when you look right here, they made attempts to kind of open things up a little bit so that it doesn't look so busy. There are some portions that look a little bit busy. I think they're more simplified though. But I think overall, as we kind of page through this, we can see that things opened up. So very simple assembly, if you ask me, starting with the forward fuselage, the cockpit tub there. A lot of external bits and some painting options going along the way here for that front fuselage section. Note you got an open canopy and a closed canopy option right here to start thinking about. Moving on with our engines, you get the full engine casings right there, although they're not really going to be exposed, so we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Intake trunks there, you got the full intake trunks. Here you have options with where you want to set those intake ramps, subsonic speeds, options, two different options for subsonic speed. You have the one option here for supersonic speed, so some different parts that determine the different angles of those ramps. And I think that was another major thing with these instructions is when in the original release, those three options for the two subsonic and the one supersonic option, they were all jammed in one small picture, and it was like, I mean, my vision's not the greatest. I'm sitting there zooming in quite a bit with that. So like I said, at least they made an attempt here to open things up in these instructions. Intake trunks going on there, those full pieces. Here we've got our horizontal tail wing positions. These are, I think they call them the tailerons because they're attached to the tails here. They're not elevons. You have three different fixed positions for them. Although I think, you know, given these slots right here, you could probably round some things out so that you can get those positioned in any different angle. So something that you could think about if you're going to be doing this build. Engines going in there. We've got, you know, this is another major option with this kit is where you can have these wings fully swept outwards with the flaps and the slats that are all exposed and some of the structure that's underneath that's exposed. So that's kind of a cool option there, but that really fixes you in this kit of having those wings swept out. You know, you can't sweep them in should you have all of those slats and flaps extended and whatnot. Here are the closed wings. So if you do the closed wing sweep, you know, you just got two halves going together, and so that's a little more simplified than the open wing option. Again, some assembly going on here with the wings, structures, vertical tail wings right here, although you're assembling them horizontally, but these are the vertical fins. Getting those fuselage sections together depending on what wing sweep option that you have. I guess let me ask this, you know, I haven't seen anybody do a build of this kit. I haven't really watched anybody or any videos, so maybe if you can throw some comments in the video as to whether or not people have found out a way to change these up so that maybe you can have these wings in any wing sweep position. So it'd be cool to know if someone figured out or devised a way to be able to do that for this particular kit. A lot of external bits going on that forward fuselage, so you know, some doors and things like that. So maybe you have some options there of opening up some access panels and things. You got the ladder there as kind of an option. Coming over here, we have our landing gear, our front landing gear. A couple different options there, right? You got the collapsed gear right here in front, or you have that exposed strut right there. So that's an option. Your main landing gears. A lot of good detailed bits going on to the main landing gear cylinders there. Coming over here, looks like more doors going on the underside fuselage. More details going on to the overall kit. The canopy here, right? I think in the original kit, I think there was just a two-piece canopy option, I believe. But here, as you could tell, we've got an option for if you're doing a closed canopy. It looks like you have a one piece, so we'll take a look at that plastic. Pallets going on, pylons, the armament, some minor armament assembly, but otherwise looks like single piece molds from the original release. Nice little picture here of the armament options that you can do. And again, like I mentioned before, really this kit just has air-to-air included in it. So if you're going to do some air-to-ground munitions on there, you're going to have to purchase those separately. Closing up this manual, we got sprue layouts and the markings and photo etch fret and so on and so forth. So, all right, let's take a look at those marking options here, because that's one of the other main changes. This sheet right here, we have really the common markings, instrument panels, a lot of really nice, I mean, this aircraft is just littered with all sorts of different decals that are going on here. You do have the decals for those walkway surfaces, or maybe perhaps you might want to decide to custom do the texture on there yourself as opposed to using the decals. All right, let's take a look at this one. Your Tomcatters up here, your Bounty Hunters down here, and you know, really these decals are very, very thin. Looks like artwork designed by Galaxy Decals. I don't know if AMK printed these or if there was some other organization that printed them, but we'll kind of take a look here closely to see if we can get some good detailed look on these decals. Nice clear colors. Deep colors, nothing real pixelated either. Looks very, very cool. I love the Bounty Hunter skull there. Those look very, very cool. Nice, good close look at these marking options here. So, all right, let's get into the plastic. Lots to look at. All right, we're going to be taking a look at our fuselage section first. Coming over here, we've got, you can see that there's some really nice detail throughout the various topside portions of this fuselage. So that nice grid pattern back here, that's typical for F-14 Tomcats, and some of the access panels that are there with some really fine recessed rivet markings that are in each of those panels. I do really like the contour change here at the forward part of the fuselage, where you've got that angular deviation that happens right here where the walkway is. So I do like that. And then if you're looking at where those, I think there are heat exchangers that are down in this portion. So you've got a nice grate and vent pattern that's right there as well on the top side. Other than that, I think, you know, this is pretty simplified detail for the top side that is typical you see on 48 scale Tomcats. Looking at the bottom side here, you can see that there's a lot of locating pins throughout the various sections of these fuselage halves. So mating them together should be pretty well aligned, should be pretty simple. Coming here on the bottom side, you can see that we have some really nice panel lining detail that's on this underside. I know a lot of this stuff may get covered up with those pallets that are there for those Phoenix missiles. But overall, I think you can really see some nice detail throughout the underside of this aircraft. And I know we don't have anything right here for these intake trunks, you know, and that's okay. But let's go ahead and take a look at those intake trunks next. Here they are, two separate sprues. Taking a look at that detail there, I mean, really, really nice all the way through. Access panels. Recessed rivet lines, rivets. Look at this hinge detail that's up here. I really like this hinge detail. Now, I think if you're going to be cutting and exposing maybe perhaps the engines, you know, you'll have to do some cutting on some of these panel lines if that's something that you're going to do. I don't know if you'll want to do that given this kit, but given the lack of engine detail, but we'll take a look at those engine casings shortly. But overall, I really do like the detail that's on these trunks. All right, let's come over to this particular sprue for the engines and the vertical tail surfaces. I like that you have two different options here where you can have those exhaust nozzles open or in the closed position. I do like when you, for these larger aircraft with these bigger engines, that you see some really nice surface detail inside those ceramic plates on the exhaust. I think getting those weathered up really nicely is a main attraction for looking at engines on these larger aircraft. Looking at these tail surfaces, a mixture of recessed and raised panel line detail. I think you can make out here some of the some of the rivet patterns that are right there, and really fine detail up here on the top side. Let's see if I can get a nice angle on there. Really nice panel line and a recessed rivet detail there on all four of the vertical stabilizers. There, take a look. All right, moving over to some other sprues here. Let's take a look at this one that has our cockpit tub. Not a lot of detail associated with this cockpit tub, but then that gets you into some of these side pieces right here. And I think when you can see, there's some really nice detail on those side walls of what that cockpit tub is going to be. You know, those are going to be the pieces that kind of go on these sides here for both the pilot and the Rio. So very nice surface detail on those pieces. We'll take a look at some of the other ones for the other control panels. Taking a look here, here's your speed brake. You know, you look at the underside, let's say you have that exposed. Yeah, it just looks like you've got some ejector pins there. Ejector pins in some other portions. I don't know if a lot of, well, these are not going to be exposed here, so no worries. But I think, you know, there are a lot of ejector pins on a host of these parts. And if they're exposed in some sort of way, then I think you've got a lot of ejector pins to have to address. Maybe a little bit disappointing there, but I mean it's not a major demotivator. Some of the landing gear doors, so we do have some ejector pins there, but again, I don't think that area is going to be exposed. And you got some nice structural detail on those doors though. Coming on the back side here, these are some of those parts for those intake ramps that you can have in the subsonic or supersonic. So I really like the fact that they've got a lot of electrical wiring bundle routings that are going through all of these. So if you have, say, in that supersonic position where most of it's exposed, you'll be able to see that. I think that's the nose landing gear area right here. So a lot of tubing runs there, so very nice detail there. Some more structural detail as well for different landing gear bay areas. These are for the main landing gear bays. So nice electrical routing runs there, and very nice structural details as well. Very, very cool. All right, let's take a look at, since we were looking at the cockpit tub, let's actually take a look more at these sprues right here, which have more pieces of that cockpit as well. Taking a look at the instrument panels, more of the side panels. Let me get some focus here. There we go. Taking a look at those side panels, you can really see some nice instrument, not instrument detail, but some control panel detail all the way through some of these pieces. Very, very nice. These are those side walls. I think there's your throttle quadrant right there that you're going to be mounting the throttles to. Looking here at your pilot instrument display, right? So you can see the MFDs, radar screen, cockpit instrumentation. I think this one's for your Rio. So nice MFDs there, as well as a host of switch details that are on the sides. So very, very nice. And again, I think this is where you make that decision. Are you going to use the decals, or are you going to paint that detail right up? I want to point one more thing out on this particular sprue, is that Right here, those are those back walls. So here are all the circuit breakers that go on the back side, the back walls of that cockpit tub. So very, very cool. Coming over here to this particular sprue, you have you know, your side walls for your ejection seats. Very nice detail there, I think. Looking at all of the different runs that are there for the structure that make up those. The seats, I think those seats are disappointing. I think you know, you want to have at least, I mean, look, these are cushioned seats, right? So I mean, there's got to be some level of creases in the cloth, or I think some of those seats have the vertical rib patterns, stitch patterns that are there for these F-14 seats. So I think I'm a little bit disappointed with those. And I mean, especially if you have an open canopy. I mean, what do people look at? People look at those ejection seats, and not having that cloth detail or that stitching detail there, I think that's a little bit disappointing. But maybe you can get some putty or something and put that in there. But really, I mean, when you look at what all of these different pieces that are part of these ejection seats, I think you're going to realize that these seats are going to be very well decked out and very well detailed too. All right, coming over to these larger sprues here, let's take a look at this one. So of course you've got, you know, those structures for that wing sweep, those wing sweep options that you have to choose. I think it's interesting that there are, you know, some actuators there, the wing sweep actuators that you're not going to see. So that's kind of interesting. So not a whole heck of a lot of detail. I think you can see some actuator detail on these pieces as well. So that looks kind of cool. I'm not sure what area that is for, but it looks very nice. You have some multiple pieces as well that are very, very similar. So, all right, coming to look at this particular sprue. Again, here's the open wing sweep structure. Right here you've got some nice external surface detail for, I don't know if those are bags or what, that are on the aft side of the F-14 where the wing sweep happens. But you can see some really nice panel line details. Over here we've got some more landing gear bay details. Very, very cool. Host of other detailed parts. Again, I think when you look through those instructions, there were a lot of different little bits that actually go on to these landing gear areas. Very, very nice detail right there for one of the bay walls of a landing gear bay. Here as well. Tubing runs, wire bundle runs. I mean, really some nice weathering all over the place that can be happening with these landing gears. So they will undoubtedly look very, very cool. Coming over here, we've got our pallets, some of the pylons that we have going on this particular kit. All two-piece pylons there. Really nice surface detail on them as well. I mean, we've got a lot of pylons to look at, but you can see different panel lines, different protrusions that are on there. Raised rivets, that's interesting, that's on these, as you can see. So very, very cool there. Let's take a look at, these are our wing sprues, so let's just look at the full two-piece versions of them. So yeah, I mean, you got your wing halves here. Those are for the two more swept options that you have, where you're not going to have your flaps and your slats and whatnot exposed. So those are those halve portions, and you can kind of see nice, nice detail there on those wing halves. Recessed panel lines, rivet detail. You've got the slats in the front. Right here, very, very nice on all four wing halves. So that looks pretty good. I'm definitely content with them. Wings will look the part, that's for sure. On the back side, okay, you can see that they place all their ejector pins. I'm not really seeing flash or anything on any of the plastic either, which is always a good sign. Let's take a look at this other sprue right here. This is for the wing option that you can have everything exposed. So here are your flaps, single piece, which is very nice. It's not like you're working with two halves. And they're very nicely detailed. I mean, they got the panel lines that are all over the place, the front side. Here are your wings that are kind of a unique structure here, because it's really allowing you for a lot of the exposed surfaces. Very, very nice, similar patterns to the full wings, but again, I mean, what you get here is you get, for some of those wing spars, you get some really nice detailed spars here with, you know, some of the attached components that go to those spars. I don't know if these, this looks like an actuator of some sort. I don't know what these components are here, but I mean, really, I mean, maybe a gearbox there or something like that. I don't really know what those components are, but you know what? Those wing spars, when they're exposed, either on the slat side or the flap side, looks really, really detailed. Very, very nice right here as well. I think this is more your aft side where your flaps are down. I think that's that structure. So not a lot of detail there, but again, it's a very thin part, so. Host of other little bits that go on with these exposed slats and extended slats and extended flaps. Very, very cool. All right, let's come over here. We've got some duplicate sprues. These are for your pylons. So again, let's take a close look at some of these pylons. You can see really nice surface detail there. Protruded, recessed. And again, these are all halves, right? So you got some glue in there to do. You got some seams that you're gonna have to take a look at. That's okay, that's pretty typical. So 2 sprues there, same thing. Let's come over here to the engines. Now again, when we're looking at, we got duplicate sprues here for the engines, and really, I mean, there's not a lot of engine detail on these casings. So if you are going to maybe perhaps cut some of the structure to expose the engines, you might have to do some scratch building. I don't know if I'd do that personally. I think I'd just build them and put them in there and leave them unexposed. And that would be okay. So I'm not so worried about the casing, lack of casing detail here. On the internal side here, we've got some nice exhaust cooling fins there, I think. You know, your turbine wheels are going to go in these slots right here, and your compressor wheels are going to go up here. So I know that you can see some ejector pin marks right there. Come over here. Ejector pin mark right there, ejector pin mark there as well on, you know, both engine halves. Not a concern at all whatsoever, because your compressor wheels and your turbine wheels are going to go there. And speaking of those, I mean, really nicely molded here. The diffuser right there. Your turbine wheel, very, very gorgeous detail right there. And this particular piece, I don't know if, I mean, that's part of your afterburner. I don't know if these are the individual fuel nozzles or what, but you can really see, or if they're diffusers or something like that, but you can really see some nice detail that's going to be visible within that engine if you're really looking down in there. All right, let's do a quick comparison here of the armament, and I'm going to compare the Mang armament missiles that are appropriate for F-14s to what's in the AMK kit here. So I'm going to put up some pictures here, and we're going to start taking a look at the AIM-54 Phoenixes. You can kind of see here there's a little bit of a trade-off here, with Mang giving you a little more detail, but at the cost of having to assemble the missiles and having to deal with seam lines. The AMK, I mean, those are single mold missiles so that, you know, you cut them right off the sprue. You could shoot them right away without having to really deal with seam lines. Although there is a little minor assembly with some of the Meng, but those are more for the nose portions and the exhaust portions of those missiles, so nothing too concerning in terms of assembly of the AMK armament. Looking at the AIM-7s here, it's, you know, roughly the same story. The body of the Meng AIM-7 had the slightest mold seam that you had to deal with, but nothing really that a knife couldn't handle there. The AIM-9s, though, those are a different story. A lot of assembly to have to go on to the Meng armament. That requires a bit more attention as you're gluing all the fins on. And then you're going to have to get the geometry right for the 8 different fins that'll be on there. So that's kind of a little bit of a bear. But when you look at the single mold AIM-9s for the AMK kit, I mean, you get some nice detail there, and again, they are single piece molds, so you can cut them right off the sprue and just go to town with painting on them. So taking a look at those sprues here, you can actually see, you know, what we're talking about here. Single piece missiles, really nice detail there. 2 AIM-9s there. Let's look at the Phoenix here. I'll bring you over here. See if I can get some focus there. So there's your Phoenixes. 4 of those that you mount on the pallets underneath that aircraft. No ejector pin marks to have to worry about. And again, some minor assembly for, you know, the exhaust or the propulsion system that are on these missiles. Here are the Sparrows right here. And I think, you know, as an option with the Sparrow, you know, you have 2 different nose cones that can go on there. Yeah, not too concerning with that assembly that you have to do, but at least you got all of the fins that are there with that mold, so it's going to be a little more efficient getting these things painted up and whatnot right off of the sprues. So, you know, I like the fact that these are a single piece missiles that you can go on and not have to worry so much about assembly, seam lines, and so on and so forth. All right, let's come over here and let's take a look at these landing gear. Here are your main landing gears right here. Pretty consistent. A very nice detail on there. At least you got some tubing runs that are there. You can see that right there. Very nice structural detail as well. Over here you have your 2 different options for your nose landing gear, whether you have them retracted right there and ready for that catapult takeoff, or you have it in that extended strut position right there. So those are your options. But again, for both of these landing gear, you have some very nice surface detail on them. Coming over here, here is for that single piece canopy. That structure right there. I'm going to bring you in over here because there is a little bit of surface detail that's on there. Hopefully we can make that out, but some very fine rivet lines that are all over this particular piece. Maybe we can get a good angle of it right there. So speaking of the canopy, I mean, let's take a look at the clear plastic here. And if you look at this, I mean, mine's a little bit loose here. Looks like it might actually break off. This one's a little more solid, so hopefully I don't have any damage down there as a result of having a loose canopy right there. But you can see that 2 different options, right? You've got your 2-piece assembly right there, or you've got that single-piece assembly as well that you can go on. And coming in here, you can really see it's very, very clear. We do have a little bit, I don't know if that's a little bit of dust. A little bit of blurring going on with this particular area of the canopy, but overall I really like the clearness of them. Good polishing will kind of take some of the defects away there, but should look really, really good. And looking right here, let's see if I can get that surface detail right there on camera. So very, very nice rivet lines that are on the canopy frame. Not sure if I can really get some visual on that. It's kind of tough to get the focus on there. There's your clear parts, and then kind of closing this up, we got a few more sprues here. We got the wheels, duplicate sprues here, nose and main wheels. Do like the hub texture right there. What I don't really like is the fact that these are two-piece wheels here. I like the one-piece ones because you have to deal with a seam line there, and then you don't really have any tread on these things. I mean, when you get these larger wheels, it's really nice to have some tread there and get some weathering, and you get a little more accuracy with that. So a little bit disappointed with the wheels a bit, to be honest with you, but again, I mean, for an F-14, it's not like the wheels are the primary feature. So, and then lastly here, we've got I think these are the bags, or I don't know, those areas in the back where the wing sweep happens. Couple different options there that you have for these particular pieces, but really no detail there. So. And as our very, very last sprue, we're taking a look at that nose, that forward fuselage structure right here. It is a single piece, which is really cool, so you don't have to deal with any sort of seam lines right there in the middle. You'd have a seam line here otherwise if they were halves, you know. So there wouldn't be many areas where those seam lines would be, but still the fact that, you know, any seam line, in my opinion, that you don't have to fight, you know, is beneficial for your build. So very, very cool here. Let's take a look at some of that surface detail. I mean, really gorgeous. Here's that gun, and I think some of this venting is very appropriate for a D model F-14. There are some differences on this forward fuselage structure for F-14s, Ds, as opposed to the As and Bs. Really nice recessed rivet lines. Really nice recessed panel lines as well. Very, very cool. You notice there's a little bit different texture here on some of the plastic, but again, I think that's just not that big of a deal. You're not really going to see any of those patterns when you get some primer and paint on there. Other side, very similar story. Very, very gorgeous surface detail right there. Very, very cool. All right, well, I think that covers it. All right, so my final thoughts on this kit. And I gotta tell you, I really love this kit. It's a more cost and economical option than, say, the Tamiya kits that are out there, especially their newly released one that has the flight deck of the carrier there that you can build with it. So definitely 20, 30 bucks cheaper than those Tamiya kits that are there. Granted, you do have the limitation of your wing sweep. So again, like I asked before, if you've seen somebody build this particular kit, where they modified their assembly in some way where they can put the wing sweep in any particular position, let us know in the comments for sure. Otherwise, I'm really ecstatic about those wings that could be fully swept out with, you know, the extended flaps, the extended slats that are there, exposing some of that detail that'll be there. I think that is going to look really, really cool. Although that's going to be at the expense of, you know, some real estate. So if you fully expand those wings out, that's going to take a little more real estate on your shelf than if you had those wings fully swept back. But, you know, nothing that's really going to detract me from building this kit. I like the single piece missiles coming right off the sprue, some minor assembly, and then shooting them with your paint and weathering and not having to worry about seam lines. That's very cool. The single piece canopy, if you're choosing to have that canopy closed, that's going to look very, very cool as well. The single piece nose forward fuselage section, having to avoid even some minor seam lines, so that's very cool right there as well. I think all of the surface detail on the fuselage is spot on for this F-14D model. It's really going to look awesome when it takes you know, some panel line washes and whatnot. So, you know, no doubt when you get this kit together, it's really going to look very, very cool. And I'm really ecstatic. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to say what Bobby says here. Let's shut up and build this thing. I'm Bill Boudreau. This is Genesis Models, and I hope you've enjoyed.